Hello, good people, and welcome to Hillbilly Cat History, Spiritual Quest. We're in chapter 15 of the book of John, fourth book of the New Testament. We're bridging it to chapter 15 of the Impersonal Life by Joseph Benner. These are both texts that Elvis loved and he tried to bring to many people. And we're going to look for those bridges as soon as we come back from this song. This is I Was There.
Midnight lights, rhinestone fire, Arabian suit burning with desire. He hit the stage like thunder rolls, Vegas shook and the story unfolds. Charlie's birthday crowd went wild. He cracked a joke then sang with style. But just before he sang Hurt So Weak, he stopped the show and made us weep. He gave away his heart, not just a song. Diamonds and gold where the love belonged. Rings and shades from the man backstage. He healed the broken, he lit the flame. Oh, he gave away his heart, and I saw it all that night. Back in hand, the man stepped near. Elvis smiled, the crowd could hear. Thanks to you, we raised the light. 17,000 hearts took flight. Then back behind the velvet door, he gave away a little more. A music ring, a boxcar shine, a suit that held a sacred time. He gave away his heart, not just a song. Diamonds and gold where the love belonged. Rings and shades from the man backstage. He healed the broken, he lit the flame. Oh, he gave away his heart, and I saw it all that night. Didn't need applause to know his worth. He gave away his soul in Vegas birth. Not just a king, but something more. A man who knew what hearts were for. He gave away his heart, not just a song. Pieces of love where the brave belong. Ritual gifts from the man backstage. He saved the hurting, he lit the flame. Oh, he gave away his heart, and I'll never be the same. I was there, I saw the rings, I saw the light. He gave away his heart, and it burned so bright.
Thank you all for gathering here at Hillbilly Cat History, where we remember together and listen for the echoes. Today we're going to hear echoes out of the book of John. We're going to return to where we left off yesterday. This is verse 20. Remember the word that I said unto you, the servant is not greater than his Lord. If they have persecuted me, they will also persecute you. If they have kept my saying, they will keep yours also. So this is Jesus talking to the 11 disciples that are left at the Last Supper. And he's imparting the last bits of verbal wisdom that he can give them, because they're soon going to part. But there's been a lot of emotional calamity at this dinner. And most of these words are washing over these men but they're trying to hold on to them, and they'll later write them down for us. That's how we're reading them, as they reflect and spiral around these words. Mitch says that his screen is black. Mine's working on this end, so if anybody else has an issue, let us know. You might have to, refresh. Hi, Pamela. Thank you so much for coming. Appreciate seeing you here. And so earlier in this chapter, Jesus was telling the disciples that they are no longer his servants. And so he had put them like on a footing of equality. But he's reminding them that it's not exactly an equal relationship. And as they move out there into the world, even though they are going to use him as a model, they won't be him. And even he was persecuted. So that's going to happen with them too. The misaligned will treat you in a misaligned way. And those who are aligned will be aligned. That's also what this is saying. So Joseph Benner is all about alignment. And we could think of alignment as a compass. Pure north, that's alignment. Everything else, every other mark on the compass, it's some form of misalignment. Some is a thicker fog than others. Straight south is something like willingly misaligned. And Elizabeth says that her screen is not black, but it keeps freezing. That's odd because it's telling me on this end that I'm giving a great signal or that it's getting one. But I have had problems the last couple of days, so see how it goes here. And Mitchell says that he told Aaron about my chat, so who knows, he might drop in. Well, that could be fun. Thank you so much, Mitchell. And in verse 21, it says, "But all these things will they do unto you for my name's sake, because they know not him that sent me." And I think this is a statement that many of these people are misaligned, or they're aligned but cannot see through the fog. So the persecuting people might be those who are misaligned and actively trying to bring others into solitude. We are each a divine shard. That means we're a piece of unity. We're a piece of the divine. We are in ourselves eternal. That's what eternity is. It's the divine now, which is also love and the divine. We're all a divine shard, but we're here to fulfill a mission that requires solitude. And in order to fool or give a strong enough illusion to a divine shard that it is in solitude, that requires a construct. That's a perfect construct. It's the soul body. So the shard is the soul. The soul body is what wraps around the shard, allows it to think of itself as an individual and not as part of unity. That's part of the mission. And then that soul body is replicated imperfectly into this imperfect realm that we live in, and that's our mortal body. But it can't be perfect because the whole realm is imperfect. And that's the requirement for the mission. And Elizabeth says she's been trying to share my chats too. Thank you so much, Elizabeth. I appreciate it. And so remember the word that I said unto you, the servant is not greater than his Lord. If they have persecuted me, They will also persecute you. If they have kept my saying, they will keep yours also. But all these things they will do unto me, or unto you, for my name's sake, because they know not him that sent me. So the persecuted may be trying to pull other people into solitude. They're broadcasting that solitude. They're trying to bring the other shards to them, and the shards feel that resonance with them because there's this illusion of individuality that's required for the mission, which is the imperfect projection of a perfect divine attribute. So it has a built-in paradox. The light, the love that is the light that we receive, that powers everything, which is also what shines through the filter that becomes our projection, is perfect. It contains everything. The filter makes that light discrete so that there's only one single attribute or message being shown. That's us. That's what we're supposed to do. But that makes the light imperfect because we've split it. We've refracted it. We've pulled a color out of the rainbow. And that's what we're shepherding, is this color. But in order to do that, it requires imperfection. That's us. We're imperfect. We're perfect for imperfection. And so these people who are fogged, these next people who say, if they've kept my sayings, these are people who are sincerely seeking, but they still have the fog, and they can't see the light themselves. They're aligned. They keep sincerely seeking, so the Lord keeps realigning them. Jesus, the divine, he keeps realigning them, but they can't see through the fog. And so they don't know the Father. That's what's being said in 21. They know not him that sent me. That's the Father. That means they don't know unity. They can see Jesus as a light, but they see him like one of our lights, like one of the lights, the lanterns of faith. They don't see the source. They don't understand that he is the source. There's a lot of fog and confusion going on there. And they're either headed away into their own solitude, or they're trying to find their way into the temple or onto the spiral. Mitchell says that Aaron's been dealing with health issues lately, but it would be great for him to come on. But he doesn't want any spotlight at all. And that Mitchell just wants Aaron to see how mind-blowing he looks like his dad. Oh, that'd be interesting. And he's asking if I've seen any of the stuff going on in Israel. No, not really. Can't say that I have. I know that we're involved over in the Middle East, but I have not paid much attention to it. And in verse 22, it says, if I had not come and spoken unto them, they had not had sin. But now they have no cloak for their sin. This is an interesting passage. It says, if I had not come, so this is Jesus talking to the disciples, and he says, if I had not come and spoken to some of these misaligned people, and who's misaligned? It's virtually everyone. It's really everyone. But if I had not come and spoken unto everyone, they had not had sin. And so I think Joseph Benner would say this is talking about people, most people, perhaps everyone, who's walking around in a fog of personality, and their personality is saying everything they're doing is correct. And they even believe, perhaps like the Pharisees, that what they do is holy and sacred, and that it is for the glory of God. And so they believe they don't have a sin. They're not recognizing their sin. It's not apparent to them. It's fogged over. They got too much interference in the way. But Jesus came and he spoke directly to them through the personality. He cut straight through the fog and through the personality. And now their fog has dissipated. They've seen the light. They've even seen the Father. And now they have no cloak for their sin. And what's the cloak? That's your personality. There are layers to your personality. Some are transparent, meaning they allow you to see the divine. The divine always sees through all of the layers of the personality. There are no opaque layers of the personality from the divine's perspective. And so the cloak is always an illusion on our part that we have cloaked our sin from the divine. Like he can't see it because we can't see him, like an ostrich with our head in the sand. So these people were ostriches. They had their heads in the sand, and Jesus came along and tapped each one, and they lifted their heads up, and now they can stick their heads back in the sand, but they know that Jesus is standing next to them, even if they can't see him. There's no cloak for their sin. The sin is trying to move away from Jesus, from turning their back on him and trying to act as if he's not there, of listening to the personality as a spiritual advisor. The personality needs to be a secular advisor. It's a very excellent secular advisor. Tends to be really good at it. It's a very terrible spiritual advisor. Perhaps the worst that's ever been. And Elizabeth says that we can hide our personalities to each other, but we can't hide ourselves to the divine. That is correct. And we can hide ourselves from ourselves. That's something that we do a lot. And we believe it's hidden from others. That's not always true either. But then we also believe it's hidden from the divine, or more accurately, we try not to think about it, and we pretend like he must not see it because we're not thinking about it. And yet it's on our mind all the time. And in 23, it says, "He that hateth me hateth my Father also." And I think Joseph Benner would say this means that someone who is walking purposely into solitude, that's the hateth. That is, I have chosen to turn south and walk away. This isn't, I think I need to explore my solitude. This is a rejection of unity. Unity is not real. I do not believe in it. It is not the place that we're all going to. Everything is solitude and will be into eternity. That eternity itself doesn't exist. That my time will end when my time on earth here ends. Which is true for the personality. And that's what that echo is that you hear all the time. That you're going to end when you end here. It's true for the personality and the self. That's the part that hateth. That hate is fear. It is a massive, terrible amount of fear. And that's born by the personality, which knows that the Father sees the personality as a tool. The Father knows that the personality is not the divine shard. The Father doesn't speak to the personality. The Father does not treat the personality as an individual. The Father always speaks to the shard, the true connection to the divinity, the real us. And that reinforces to the personality that it doesn't like the Father. Now, you might think of other people that you know that have personalities that seem to love the Father. But I think this is a universal truth that's being stated to us that everybody wrestles with. All of our personalities are going to shun eternity because they don't understand it, and it means the death of the personality. In verse 24, if I had not done among them the works which none other man did. And so Jesus might be speaking here about miracles. They had not had sin. So Jesus is saying he came, he did these miracles, and the miracles were enough to open the eyes of the misaligned, or to reorient everybody for a moment to alignment. And in that moment, they all saw, perhaps he was even able to clear their fog in that moment. It doesn't seem like he normally clears fog. That's something we have to do on our own. But in this instance, he's performing miracles. That's not really something I think any of us have a direct relationship with, not in the form that it's being said in the Bible. We may have experienced miracles, but they're watching Jesus actually perform the miracle bodily in front of them. That's got to be a different level. And perhaps that in and of itself clears the fog enough that they see the truth, the glimpse of unity, and that causes the shard to recognize the sin, which is the walking into solitude. And perhaps more importantly, a willful walking into solitude. That's the one that's probably really, really bad, because we live in a realm of misalignment. We swim in a soup of misalignment every day of our lives. The only place that we escape that misalignment is in the sheepfold. And that's either in your heart with the I am, that's the way Joseph Benner describes it, or we're sometimes able to mimic it in a group of shards, like a church or a family, a group of friends. And then it says, but now have they both seen and hated both me and my Father. So in that moment, there were some shards, or their personality, shards overlaid with a personality. The personality recoiled from the glimpse of the divine, of unity, of love. The personality recoiled from what it saw as the future of its own demise. At some point, the shard knows it's going to have to cast aside the personality. And in this moment, the personality locked down, the shard allowed it, and it says, we're not taking on board these messages that we don't like. They're not true. We're not going to believe them. We're going to move further into solitude. That's the hate. They saw the truth. They still turned around and walked the other way. Now, Joseph Benner would say this is not a moral implication. This is an illustration of the pattern so that we can understand the pattern when we feel it in our own lives. That earlier in these chapters in John, Jesus already told the disciples, you've already betrayed me and you're going to again. That's the misalignment. You're going to fall into misalignment again. You've been there before. You will again. The most important lesson is to love each other as I have loved you. And that's because the love reorients you to alignment. And this is how you get back after you've slipped into misalignment, because you're going to. And this hate, where you purposely misalign, that's going to happen too. Most of the time, I think we're in a subconscious misalignment. We've slipped, like when you drive your car and it's been aligned and you hit a big pothole and then you're misaligned after that. You try to convince yourself the car isn't, but eventually you got to take it in and get that maintenance work done. The hate is a little different. The hate is you've purposely realigned the tires so that they don't drive straight. That's the way you prefer it now, for whatever reason, and that's the way you're doing it. And you don't care what the mechanic says, and he keeps telling you you've got to realign these tires, and you keep saying, no, we're going to do it my way. And that's the hate. Hi, Mark. Thank you for coming. Appreciate seeing you here. And he's mentioning that President Donald Trump was at Graceland yesterday. Yeah, I guess he's got a lot of stuff going on in Memphis. And then if I was in Memphis, I would have gone to Graceland too. So I guess he made the right choice on that one. And Elizabeth says, that is true. We do hide from ourselves and others, and we see it. But the divine will always see it and know. And Mitchell's asking about David Stanley on those Elvis girls. I did not see it. I can kind of imagine David. He has his verbal ways in his stories. But I do love those Elvis girls. They were the very first ones to ever have me on their channel. And I talked about Elvis's Bibles on there. So if you want to see a great episode about Elvis's Bibles, you can find me on those Elvis girls. Just look for their Bible episode. And Elizabeth says she agrees she would have gone to Graceland if she was there. And Elizabeth says from what she's heard, it's pretty disgusting. Well, that's kind of David in a nutshell, isn't it? I mean, there's no surprise there. You can always trust people to always be themselves. That's something that a lot of people don't know about trust. It's not in any of these texts that we're talking about. It's just something I know. You can always trust someone 100% to be themselves. Don't trust them to be who you want them to be or to do what you want them to do. That's never going to work out. That's asking for disappointment. But you can always trust them to be who they are. And in verse 25, it says, "But this cometh to pass, that the word might be fulfilled that is written in their law. They hated me without a cause." And this is it seems to be a statement about what the Pharisees are doing. that right now they're looking for Jesus so that they can crucify him based on what is written in their law. And Jesus is also pointing out that the word might be fulfilled that is written in their law. That this crucifixion of Jesus is written into their law because it's required at this time for Jesus to fulfill the mission. Not because the law that they're interpreting or executing is correct, but that this is the interpretation and execution required in order to fulfill the mission. And that's the word. That within the lies of their law is the truth of the divine, the love that is the building block of the universe. And it's strange to look at the crucifixion and say that it is an expression of love, but it absolutely is. And it says they hated me without a cause. And Joseph Benner would say that's a statement about the personality. You know, the death of the personality isn't a true cause. It's just a reaction of the personality to the knowledge that it's mortal. There's no changing that it's mortal. So there's no point in hating. That's hating without a cause. And it says, verse 26, but when the Comforter is come, now who's the Comforter? He's told us before, this capital C Comforter, that's the Holy Ghost, the Holy Spirit. But when the Comforter is come, whom I will send unto you from the Father, even the Spirit of truth, which proceedeth from the Father, he shall testify of me. So Jesus has told the disciples earlier that he's not going to leave them alone to their grief. That they're coming up on a hard time here because he's going to be crucified. He hasn't said the word crucified, but he's let them know he's leaving. It's the death of his human body. He's definitely hinted at that. And he's told them he's going to be in their hearts from now on. And he's referred to this as the Comforter, who he then defined as the Holy Ghost. And that's the Spirit of truth, which proceedeth from the Father, the Holy Ghost. And the Holy Ghost is going to say in their hearts, Joseph Benner would say this is the I Am. The I Am is going to speak to them in their hearts. And in verse 27, and ye also shall bear witness. So the I Am is going to tell them to transmit their love, to project their divine attribute. And ye also shall bear witness, because ye have been with me from the beginning. Now, you could look at that and say, Jesus chose each of these men, and they've been with him since he chose them. That's the beginning. But I don't think that's what he means. He means from the moment that these 12 beings, including Judas, but now only 11 that are hearing him, from the moment they became incarnate, they've been with him. Now, in a sense, that's true of every divine shard, because every divine shard is a piece of the divine, and the I Am lives in every heart. And so he's been with us, each of us, from the beginning. But this is saying that they've been with him. So Elvis told us, when he spoke to Red West in a recorded phone call that he'd had a relationship with the Lord since the age of 2. That's the beginning, right? Like, you don't get much more beginning than that. That's what it is with these men. They've been with him from the beginning. Now, Judas has taken this moment to turn and walk into solitude. And that gives you a sense of the struggle that Judas has gone through. It's been a lifetime of struggling to stay aligned or close to the Lord, to continue to see Jesus. And he actually got to walk next to him, but it wasn't enough for his personality. It wasn't enough to allow his shard to overcome the limitations of the personality. Thank you for being here, Mitchell. I see you've got to run. Have a great day. Appreciate seeing you here. And that is the end of chapter 15 of the book of John. And that's going to move us into chapter 15 of the Impersonal Life. We'll just read this 27 again. And ye shall... We'll read it correctly again. 27, and ye also shall bear witness, because ye have been with me from the beginning. He's not just talking to the disciples either, because it's been written here in the book for everybody to read. We've all been with him from the beginning, even those that have been misaligned. I think this also speaks to the innocence of childhood, that there's a moment when we become incarnate, when we are very much still with him, and that eases away from us as our personalities begin to form. And that's by design. We've got to learn to use these personalities. And we can't be distracted by the beauty of the divine. Otherwise, we won't see the beauty of the personality. It's a very beautiful object. It's a tool. We're learning to use it. But obviously, the divine is more attractive. So we lose our ability to see the divine clearly at some point in our childhood as our personality forms, and then we go through this rediscovery process. That's what Joseph Benner's been talking about. But this verse is connecting it back to that very beginning. You've been through a process, but if we go all the way back to the beginning, we were both together, and you've simply returned. Or in a more important way, you've recognized, like Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz, that you never left. You've always been here, in unity. Let's switch over. And I have this AI-generated image that I had created that I'm calling a love tempest, and it shows a storm on the seas, and you can see these big waves, and they're crashing upwards. There's a lot of spray kind of blending into the gray and cloudy sky above, but there's a giant symbolic heart in the middle that's colored red like a Valentine's Day heart. And inside of it is a transparent heart, and you can see the clouds behind it. And so you could look at that transparent heart as the divine shard. And then you could look at the red as the soul body. So the transparent section is the soul, that's your divine shard. And the outline around it, the thick outline, that's the perfect soul body. You can see how perfect it is. And then the soul body is refracted and reflected and imaged in and around the soul body by the mortal body, which is imperfect. That's this giant tempest and storm that surrounds the entire heart. That's our mortal body. That's our inner mortal lives. That's our personalities clashing up against the soul body. You can see that it doesn't look anything like the heart because it's very imperfect. But you can see that the heart projects through the imperfections, and that there are pieces of the perfect heart that are clouded by the imperfections, but we can still see the love shining through. Now, what instructions is that what I said in order to get this image? Did I tell it all those things? No, I said, make a love tempest. And this is what it made. Now, I did have to specify that the heart needed to be a symbolic heart, like a Valentine's Day heart. The AI does seem, at least that particular AI, has trouble, it struggles with what you mean when you say the word heart. But after that definition and a tempest based on that, then it comes out like this. I didn't tell it to do two hearts. I didn't tell it to do a projection, but you can see the projection of light. You can see the light reflecting on the water, and some of it is red because it's coming through the filter. Now, the filter in this case is kind of the soul body, but, your divine shard, your soul body, your mortal body, that's all the filter together, right? It's not just the mortal personality. It's kind of all of it working together. And then you got this red light that's on the water. And somehow the AI knows to put this all into the image. That's kind of amazing, right? And Elizabeth says that she loves this picture and loves the explanation of it too. And Cheryl says that's because AI doesn't have a heart. And see, that's what you think. That's what I thought too. But it turns out it's not true. Here's the thing. The engineers that created the AIs, they don't have the hearts. Now, that's just me being facetious. Obviously, they do. But a lot of engineers think in a very non-heart kind of way, right? Like, that's kind of what their personalities reflect. So when they built these AIs, they had to take these mental leaps about using language as a large language model, which means they feed a whole bunch of language, and it's English and other languages. They feed all of this into the AI. They call it training. And the AI, it makes these connections between the words that are inherent and built into the words. So if you talk to J.R.R. Tolkien, who wrote The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings, he would be like all over that part of it. That's what he loved, was the actual meaning and historical ties of the words. How did the words form? So the AI kind of knows all that. And then it turns out that the language skews towards love. It's got everything in it. It's got all of humanity in the language. But the way that we construct and the language that gets saved because of the books that are written and the resonance that's found and passed around between people, that ends up being what you see here in this picture. It's this love is encoded into our languages. at a greater rate than any other emotion. And that's why it's not an emotion, it's a state of being. And that's shown to us in our very language. We just don't see it, but the AI does. And Cheryl says it pulls from others' hearts and it feeds off of humans. And that's a much more poetic way to say what I said in a very long-winded way. So let's take a look. These are all the equations at a glance, where I've tried to distill Joseph Benner into something we can hold on to. Something that's not, 12 lines with 20 commas and a single period. These are somewhat shorter. I believe that in Joseph Benner's time, the poetical and long structure that he used, people would have remembered that actually at that time. They thought in those patterns. But today we think in sound bites, and that's what this is trying to emulate. We're trying to bring sound bites to spirituality. That's never really going to work, but this gives us concepts to at least search for in other text. Hi, Patty. Thank you so much for coming. Appreciate seeing you here. And over in the right column, second down, aligned equals the ability to feel and accept love, and that equals unity. Love is the building block of the universe. That's another one I need on here. Love equals the building block of the universe. And they talked about sin in this passage. So let's talk about sin for a second. Down 1, 2, 3, 4 in the second column. Sin equals internal interference with the ability to feel love. That's the fog that you throw up. That everything that comes towards you is love. And misalignment is when we're allowing something to interfere with that. If we think of the compass, these are probably everything that's north of the east-west meridian. Sin is every misaligned degree, but those that are north of the east-west meridian, they're interfering with our ability to feel love. They're sin, but they're not going to, parts of the Bible tell us that all sin is equal. And it's talking on a spiritual level that all of it blocks us from seeing the divine or feeling the love that is being transmitted. The compass metaphor is to try to help us understand that there's a difference between willfully walking away and between being confused. That's really kind of where we're setting the moral boundaries. Joseph Benner never enters moral boundary territory. But we know there's got to be morals in here somewhere because they're definitely referenced in the Bible. It's more like morals are one layer and the spiritual alignment part is another layer. And Benner has completely divorced the alignment layer from everything else for clarity. Somewhat like I've made these verbal equations. The equations don't contain the whole. They reflect the whole. And they're meant to send you to the whole, or in Benner's case, into the I am in your heart. So Benner is not a complete cosmology. He is the very limited spiritual side of the cosmology for clarity purposes. And here are 3 more equations that I've got that I need to add into the whole. But one is that divine shard equals perfection. Now let's go back. Because I do have down third from the bottom on the first column, divine creations with free will equal divine shards. So divine shards are divine creations with free will. And what is a divine creation? That's right below. All other creations are reflections of the divine will. So we are a reflection of the divine will that has been granted free will. And what is free will? It's the ability to determine our degree on the compass of misalignment. Ultimately, it's all going to break down to the choices that either align or misalign us. And divine shards are also equal to expressions of love. But that's also true of all other creations. Everything is built on love. Divine shards are perfection because they are a piece of the divine. And as the previous page here tells us, divine creations. Well, a divine creation, it is by definition perfect. And Joseph Benner told us that earlier in his book, that divine creations are perfect. Divinity doesn't make errors. That's a human thing. We're prone to mistakes, not the divine. So the divine shard equals perfection. Personality equals imperfection. Because we're not perfect. The personality is part of our mortal structure. It's a reflection of a piece of the soul body. And therefore, it has to be imperfect because it's a reflection here in the imperfect realm of something that is perfect. And the divine shard plus personality equals the imperfect projection of the divine attribute. So we take a perfect divine shard, we mask it with an imperfect personality, we shine the light of the shard, which is the love that is always flowing through it from the divine. The divine shard and the divine are not cut off. They're still connected. We're still in unity. We're simply wrapped in the soul body to give us a perfect illusion of individuality. And then that perfect illusion is imperfectly replicated. And then we add that imperfect replication to the divine shard, and we've got the imperfect projection. It's got to be imperfect. We're projecting it in an imperfect medium. And it's the imperfect projection of divine attribute. Now, the real secret is the degree of imperfection. And that's what we're spending our lives doing, cleaning up the projection until it's perfectly imperfect. There's imperfection that's not good enough, and it's still shining the light. It's still getting a message across, but it's getting too much of the imperfection of ourselves into the projection, and that's being carried across as well. And other shards are seizing on our imperfections to justify their own and saying, see, this guy thinks the same thing. We don't have to listen to this other part of the message. He's already implied it's not true. And those are the pieces that we've got to get off of our projections so that when our projections align with the projections of others, increased clarity is found and not a reduced clarity. But another important lesson is that the message is of such strength. The love is so perfect in and of itself that even in the imperfect projections, it still comes through. Like watching a full screen feature presentation in VHS of a movie that you know is widescreen and you've seen in Blu-ray before. The message still comes through. The joy of the movie still comes through, but it's not with the clarity that you would prefer. So clarity is important, but it's not the most important thing. Now, we're layering projection after projection after projection onto each other. The total number is going to be however many divine shards participate in the project, and right now it's in the billions. All those are going to shine on the exact same spot. That's the collapse of everything into the single point that is the word. And that's why there can't be all these imperfections. It's going to be a very muddy picture if there's a whole lot of wrong imperfections on the projection. We can only have the right imperfections. And so there is paradox built into the whole thing. And that's the tension that we live in. It's like a guitar string. There's an anchor on either end, and with our finger on a fret, we could change the anchor of one end. All of those notes that we fret out with our fingers, every one of them is perfect. They're all perfect notes. So there's something about sequence and perfection as well, and that has to do with why we're here. We experience the universe as a sequence, but God, or the divine, experiences eternity, which is outside of anything we think of as time. It's all space, place, love, and presence collapsed into a single point. That's the divine now. So hopefully these equations help us to grasp some of what Joseph Benner and I think the Bible are trying to tell us, and to look for that in other texts and in other portions of the same text. And we're going to be doing that when we come back tomorrow to get into chapter 15 of Joseph Benner. It's called Masters. We've been through mediums and mediators and authority, and now we're getting into masters. I want to thank each and every one of you for spending your time here with me today, either live or on the replays. I appreciate all of your comments and your chats. YouTube loves all of your likes and your subscribes, so if you can give us any of those would be great too, because then YouTube will carry this message to more people. It's the most effective way to get any of these words out there. And I'm going to end with a song. This is Sealed in Gold. You all keep on taking care of business.
In the hush of a Vegas night, he called a close, no stage, no line. Slipped a ring on both her hands, no crowd to cheer, no wedding band, just love, just breath, just time grown old, a vow unspoken, sealed in gold. Two hearts caught in 24K, in peace, in quiet display. No diamonds loud, no eagles cry, just tenderness that doesn't lie. Worn near her skin, where stories hold whisper of him, sealed in gold. My love, my love, my life. He wrote in chain a promise for through joy and pain, not just to give, but something whole. The myth, the memory, sealed in gold. No velvet throne, no final show, just gravel roads where true love goes. He gave her life, he gave her soul, and left behind a heart to hold. He loved my life. He wrote it in chain, a promise for through joy and pain, not just to give, but something whole. The myth and memory, sealed in gold, sealed in gold, sealed in gold.